right, this is Felecia Pearson Smith with Front Row Conversations. I am so excited to be back with you, and what a great way to start the spring season by having another authentic conversation for pastors' wives and ministry leaders. And my guest today, for purposeful living, I should say, and my guest today is none other than Allyson Felecia Smith, and she's going to have a conversation with us, and it's called Life in the Fishbowl. And so today our conversation is an authentic conversation with a PK who speaks her mind and heart on what it is to live in full view. And last year we had a conversation with Allyson, and it was called Conversation from the Back Row. And so today we're up front, live and personal. So our show today is What Are the Issues? Hi, Allyson.
Hi, Lady Felecia.
Okay, Reverend Felecia, Lady Felecia.
Hi, Reverend Felecia. Hi, Mommy.
Okay, this is my daughter, and as you know, Allyson is you may not know this, she's a 2005 graduate of Spelman College, and she is a 2010 graduate of the Candler School of Theology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and her area, of course, is, I'm going to say, faith and human sexuality. Is that good enough, what we can say?
Sexuality and Christianity.
Okay, sexuality and Christianity. Okay, so Allyson, today I just really want to continue this conversation with preachers' kids or pastors' children, and I think it's a vital conversation. It's so important because sometimes that's not the voice that we hear. So part one of this show, and this will be a 4-part series, part one of this show talks about what are some of the issues. What do you see some of the issues as it relates to living life in the fishbowl and also around emotional, spiritual health?
I would say that some of the issues of living life in a fishbowl, particularly for a preacher's kid, would be feeling like your life is not your own. I said this before the last time we talked that, you know, people judge how good a teacher is by how well their students learn, they pass tests, doctors by how many people they heal. People really test how well strong a pastor's ministry is by how their family is living. So when you're a PK, then your life is not your own. You're expected to live up to a certain expectation so you don't embarrass the family, the ministry, or cause your parents to lose the church or anything like that. So for emotional and healthy healing, that could be problematic because you're not allowed to publicly show emotions. You're not allowed to publicly deal with anything because everything has to be kept inside so that the saints can't find out, so the saints can't crucify you for doing what they all do anyway.
Okay, so you're saying you're not allowed to show your emotions. Let's talk about that because I'm just started reading Reverend Bishop T.D. Jakes' daughter's book, Sarah, and I can't think of the name of it right away. Lost and Found. And I was just amazed at her story and her journey. So let's talk about what it is to keep those emotions inside. What do you mean by that? Let's go a little bit deeper. What are some of the emotions that you're not allowed to voice?
Anything that's not pleasant, joyous, or Christian-like. And by Christian-like, Christians, we only deal with emotions. Oh, I'm so pure of joy. I'm so happy. One song that I really can't stand, even though I love to sing it, is I Won't Complain. And the reason why is because the whole song is I've had some good days, I've had some bad days, but all of my good days outweigh my bad days, so I won't complain. So what that creates in Christians is a sense of if there's something bad going on, I should keep my mouth shut because I've had too many good days and God's been too good to me to say anything bad. Well, we can internalize that emotionally and saying, okay, well, if I'm mad, I shouldn't be mad because Jesus is about joy. So because Jesus is about joy, I should be happy. Jesus got mad. That's why Jesus was flipping over tables in the temple, because Jesus was mad. And I think oftentimes we focus so much on happy, joyous Jesus that we forget to deal with the other emotions that Christ dealt with. Christ was angry. Christ cried. That's why everybody says Jesus wept. Christ grieved. He mourned. Christ questioned God. And we often forget that Christ went through these emotions. We only focus on joyous, happy Jesus. And it doesn't allow us to deal with our true emotions when we're grieving, when we're upset, when we're mad. because we, for some reason, equate negative emotions to not being fully Christian or happy.
So you're saying as a, and you know, especially what's the new song that has come out? I love it. I'm happy or be happy.
Happy,
Um,
yeah.
oh, happy. It's a great song. So you're saying life in the fishbowl means that you're not able to, as a pastor's child, as a ministry leader's child or daughter or woman, or just one of their children, you're not allowed to express that array of emotions. And if you're not, what happens when you do?
I think in the African diaspora, we're not allowed to express any emotion. So I don't think that's just for preachers' families. Any family, if there's something going on, you're told whatever happens in this house stays in this house. Nobody knows. Put on a happy face when you leave this house. So if this is what we're being told in our families, then of course as pastors' families, it's doubled. It's twice as much.
Okay.
Definitely put on a face. You know, you're being watched, things of that nature. And so when you're on that constant fishbowl, then it can be stifling. That's why a lot of PKs rebel, because you've been told to act a certain way, present a certain way, be a certain way. So a lot of us, we rebel against that, because the notion is, why do I have to maintain a certain behavior just for you to keep your job?
So one of the issues around being a PK is the inability to express emotions. What are some other issues, since we're talking about what are the issues? What are some of the other issues?
Some other issues as a PK, which I've experienced a lot, is having church members who have something against the pastor take it out on the children.
How is
and I'm
that?
sure many PKs can talk about that, how they've been treated bad by church members who didn't like their parents. They've been disrespected by church members who didn't like their parents. They've been a scapegoat for anger from church members who didn't like the parents, and the children have to suffer because they feel like either they're giving the parents, mess, or they'll find a way to bring the family into it, include the family, treating the children wrong, things of that nature. So I think that's another issue, our children, pastors' children, being the scapegoats of resentful members.
So how do you handle that? Well, I shouldn't ask how you handle it.
You should ask how I handled it. I know how I handled it. You should ask somebody a little more.
Let's be honest, because we're saying authentic conversations. How did you handle it, Allyson, when there were people who did not like your father and did not like your mother, really? That's a whole nother show. Or had problems, I should say, with your parents, be it your mother and father, and so inadvertently would take these type of emotions and things out on you. How did you handle that?
I lashed out on them. I wasn't afraid of authority, so I always had an issue with authorities, and I never grown up had respect for a lot of authority, so I had no problem stating my mind. Now, of course, I would get in trouble because they're the adult and I'm the child. But in my mind, I'm treating them the exact way I'm being treated. So if you give me disrespect, I'm going to be disrespectful back. Now, of course, that's not the right way to handle it, but growing up, that is how I handled it.
So growing up, so even as a young adult, how were you able to navigate that as you matured in the Lord?
And I know my is very upset when I say this, but when I got older and church members would try to pop off on me or find other reason, I would just look them dead in the eye and say, I'm not that saved, right? Like, we can handle this a whole non-Christian way. And then they would usually back up off of that. Now, that's not the right way to handle it. Now I just smile and nod and ignore.
Okay, so would you say your maturity has led you to the point where you realize it's their issue and not your issue?
Yes. Okay. It's a reflection on them, not a reflection on me.
Okay, so let me just ask this then. Because we're talking about some of the issues. Okay, so that's one issue, not being able to show your emotions, having to deal with people who may say things, do hurtful things to you because of their relationship or lack of a relationship with the pastor or the pastor's wife. What else would you say would be another issue around living life in the fishbowl?
Seeing your family preach about one thing but living another.
Okay, let's talk about that.
I think that's difficult.
Living one thing, saying one thing but living another. Let's talk about that.
And I think it's so interesting because Sarah Jakes talks about that in her book, the little snippet I did get a chance to read, where she talks about how she's sitting in church listening to her father preach a sermon on abstinence and purity and waiting till you're married, and she's sitting in a congregation with a baby in her stomach. Something like things like that. Or you'll hear sermons on living a holiness lifestyle, and you come home and it's something totally different. So it's kind of the contradictions that can happen, which is it's just human contradictions happen too as well. I think another major issue that a lot of PKs have is resentment. A lot of resentment towards God, towards you can't live a certain way, can't do certain things because you're expected to be a certain way because of your parents' profession.
Okay. How do you handle the resentment, or how were you able to
Counseling.
navigate? I think we said that last time. How did counseling help you, Allyson? Because you are involved in ministry, and when we get to another aspect of this, we're going to talk about finding your own voice. So how, and I think you talked about it last time, how did counseling help you, and why is it that people don't take advantage of the counseling? Or what would you say to a PK or a preacher's kid or a pastor's child who's listening to this and who may really have a lot of things balling up? How would you encourage them to get into counseling, and the church has not necessarily supported counseling? What would you say to them?
I would say go. I mean, it's a stigma behind counseling because nobody wants to be thought of as, oh, I'm going to counseling, oh, I'm crazy, maybe I really am crazy. Well, the news is we all crazy. And the best put the analogy is if you broke your leg and you broke a bone, you would go to a doctor to set that bone so that bone will properly heal. If you tried to heal your own leg, the bone might heal incorrectly. It might be, I don't know, medicine, funny, something like that.
Right.
It goes with emotions. If stuff has happened in your life that has damaged your emotions, God has placed in this world professionally trained people to heal those emotions. And it's the same way that some stuff that we try to heal ourselves is going to be like an unset bone. It's going to grow in crooked, be funny. But knowing that there are people here that God has placed for us to talk to help us work through things that we can't fully understand. And I think the counseling piece was probably the greatest piece for me because my counselor said when I finished, she's like, when you came in, you were very, very, very angry. I don't even think you realized how angry you were. And having somebody I can confidentially speak about, my anger, my emotions, my issues, and having somebody tell me how to navigate my emotions and issues, how to look at things from a different perspective. And for me, because I went to a Christian counseling service, I was able to grasp everything together because they had the theological training and the counselor training, so they were able to put everything together. So when I'm speaking about how I feel towards God, they had the theological training say, maybe you should look at it this way. What you were taught was not necessarily true. Stuff like that. So.
Well, wouldn't you say that there's a tremendous need even in the church today, be it in this country or globally, to create, how do I want to say, a more healthy culture? And what can we do as leaders to move toward that? Because clearly you grew up in our household. Definitely. And we were trying to figure out some stuff ourselves, for real. We still are trying to figure out things. So what is it that, if you could say something to church leaders, be them in the western part of this world or globally, what is the one thing that we need to work toward in terms of creating a healthier culture so that our children and those persons who live in the household can grow up to be healthy emotionally and spiritually? What would you say?
Until you become emotionally healthy yourself, it's just you can't impact a culture until you become emotionally healthy yourself. You can't say I want an emotionally healthy church and you have emotionally unhealthy leaders. So the leaders, the church, the culture, everything reflects those who lead. And so in order for us to lead and lead people towards being more emotionally healthy, we have to work on being more emotionally healthy ourselves. I couldn't have this conversation 3 or 4 years ago because I wasn't emotionally healthy. I probably wouldn't even agree to do the show 3 or 4 years ago. And so because I took the journey to take whatever it took for me to get emotionally healthy, now I can encourage others to do the same as well.
Okay, well, you have heard it. Allyson has begun a wonderful conversation with us on part 1, Life in the Fishbowl. and what are the issues. She's talked about the issue of emotional health, not being able to express one's emotions. She's talked about how to navigate people who perhaps treat you in an unhealthy way because of issues they may have with a pastor or a pastor's spouse. She's talked about what it means to create a culture of emotionally healthy people, and it starts with the leadership. And so now we have it, and now this conversation, part one, is coming to an end, and we'll hear the rest of part two shortly. Thank you for joining us on Front Row Conversations with Sylvia Global.